I've got the need for speed. Okay, need for speed may be an overstatement. This is our chariot for the day. Hey, there he is, John!
How are you?
Good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you.
You as well.
So we're flying together.
We're flying together, baby.
What could possibly go wrong?
That's
man?
right, that's right.
We've never flown together.
I have no, and here's a secret. I don't know if this will catch this. I've never actually flown in a high-wing airplane.
You know what? Me either.
Oh, good. Well, then we're in good company. Well, that's going to be fine. This is the first 172 I've been in, and we're comfortable with each other.
Are other ones a little wider?
I don't know. I've never been in a 172.
No, like what you fly with. Pippers?
Well, okay, the Cherokee, those are pretty comfy.
Yep.
The Lance Air, I'd be sitting on your lap.
Yeah, I bet.
It's only big enough for two anorexic supermodels. The 310 is spacious. The Cherokee 6 was spacious. The Jetstar has got lots of room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I bet. Okay.
Now the one thing that you have to do though is
You gotta get it.
you gotta say that. That's the only way this is gonna start.
Okay, you ready?
If you could
All right,
show us
clear prop.
Oh yeah.
All right, Alpha 9, Alpha to...
It's going to take us a while to get 400 feet to get those flaps up.
Yeah, it is.
What are we climbing at? Oh, well, 400 feet per minute.
Yeah, that's nice. Although we're dropping speed a little bit.
I'm guessing 10 minutes.
That's hysterical. That's about this. You know, my Lance Air will do it from sea level in about 6 minutes.
Really?
Yeah.
So we can go to 7,500 from 7,000 feet in 6 minutes.
Yeah.
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 Actually, you know, not too bad. We're climbing at
Taxi cards.
400.
Altimeter 3031.
That's pretty good.
All right, Tulin South, 7,500 on the button.
Nice. At a whopping 90 knots, 95 knots even.
Well, I did pull the power back.
Okay. Well, this is the man, the myth, the legend, John Ramstead. He's done a couple things with aviation. F14 fighter pilot. Done some really interesting stuff there. Maybe I got a couple questions for you about that. As a naval aviator, you've watched Maverick, right? The movie Top Gun Maverick.
Multiple times.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
Good.
okay,
I know.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Everybody has. That's why my wife, this mustache.
Yeah.
100% her idea after we went and watched the movie. I cannot, for the viewers asking me, I cannot shave it off because my wife is demanding I have the mustache because of that movie. And until she determines otherwise, the mustache stays.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So in Top Gun Maverick, is it realistic? Like the stuff that they're doing and like that.
Okay. Here, first of all, they had to create a scenario to use the F-18, in that target area, right? Yeah. So let's just,
Because they would have used the F-35 probably.
Yeah, they would use some other things, but you know what?
Or a drone. They probably wouldn't even have sent a person in there.
Yeah, so you got, to have a reason, which, it was not a bad reason, but I'll tell you this. The tactics and the flying they did is absolute flying that we did.
Really?
100%. As a matter of fact, I was a LAT instructor, low altitude tactics.
Oh.
So we would do missions where you and I are flying welded wing through, look at these canyons here, we're in Colorado.
What do you mean welded wing? Is that where
like
you're
this.
Super tight formation?
Yeah, probably, you're not, it's not like Blue Angel tight, but you're probably within 20, 30 yards of each other, up to 100 yards.
And you're doing like 500 knots or something?
Yeah, 500 knots, and then you might have a max altitude. We would usually have a hard deck of 100 feet for safety, but you're between 100 and 300.
Holy crap.
And you're ripping around. Now think about this.
100 feet off of the ground doing 500 knots.
Now think about this. So this is a valley right here. We're flying along, we're looking at this valley. Let's just say this valley took a 90-degree turn. So here's one of the things we would teach everybody. So you're coming into the valley, and all of a sudden this guy here just starts his turn. He just starts ripping right in front of you. Okay?
Yeah.
And then I'll delay my turn and I'll come out, and the way you time it is you come back into that mutual formation welded wing after the turn.
Okay,
so those are the things you practice. So you're always in mutual support because you also have your sight lines. I'm looking out at you, so this is we're getting a little bit of...
Yeah, we want to head south and stay away from that stuff over there.
Yeah, I'm gonna turn around and kind of loop out this way a little bit.
All right, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know he switched over.
Although it's doing a good job of getting some of the bugs off of it.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, we would fly that, and you know something else. If you watch it closely, you'll notice this. When they got to do that big climb out.
Yeah.
You'll notice on the front of the stick there's a paddle, and the paddle disconnects the G limiter. The F-18 will not let you overstress the airplane.
At what's the stress limit without the paddle?
I think the F-18 is, I think it's 7.8.
Oh, that's not, I mean, that's a lot, but it's not like an insane amount.
F-14 was only 7.2.
Yeah.
Right? The F-16, which I flew, was 9.0. That's just painful. There's a huge difference between 7 and 9. 9 hurts.
Yeah.
I don't care what you say, 9 hurts. But
What's the most G's you've ever pulled?
9.
9 in the
9 in
F-16?
F-16.
Yeah. Gosh.
Yeah, that's just...
Your face deforms and your chin ends up on your lap and stuff.
Yeah, you only do that because you have to. You do it the first time because you want to, and then you only do it after that because you have to. But you'll notice when he grabs the stick, they actually pull that paddle in, which disconnects the G limiter, which is the only way the Hornet can go past that G limit.
Yeah.
So that, you know, they tried to be as realistic in the flying as they could.
So what's the actual G limit of the airplane then when they pull that paddle and they yank back?
As far as you can go until you break it.
Tell me more about your Naval Aviator. I want to know the scariest moment in your flying career, because you were in the military, Navy stuff, and then you were flying commercial stuff after that for a little while, and
Yep.
then you had a Top Gun thing, but because of an unfortunate softball accident.
Yep.
So yeah, just hit the highlights, and then I want to know what the scariest moment of your flying career was.
Well, scariest moment, that's easy. I was coming in after a mission in Iraq, late at night, I don't know, probably 4 in the morning, and you know, everybody's clearly tired. I'm coming in to land, and the guy who landed on the carrier in front of me didn't get out of the landing area soon enough, so they had to wave me off. So all of a sudden, your sight picture at night is, there's almost no depth perception, even with the moon and stars out. It almost feels, because you're coming in at 150 miles an hour, it feels like you're too high and coming in too fast to land safely. It's just, your brain is rebelling every time. That was my own experience. But I'm coming in, and all of a sudden the lights go off, flashing red everywhere, and I hear wave off, wave off, wave off. So you go to full power, and at night, you can't see the ocean. Right, I'm probably at this point at about 150, 200 feet off the water. So I go to 100% power, pull the nose up, and what I always did around the boat at night is I climbed as aggressively as I could. So I'm at full power, so I'm probably 25, 30 degrees nose up, dirty.
Afterburner, the whole thing?
Not afterburner, because you gotta manage your fuel around the boat, because you don't want to go tank at night. Go get gas, airborne tank gas.
Oh, right.
But I'm climbing up, and they give me 2,000 foot altitude, climb to 2,000 feet, and come back around. While I'm passing 1,200 feet, and they're like, you know, Freelancer 207, climb maintain 1,200 feet, which I'm blowing through. So I pull both throttles back to idle and start pushing the nose over, and I get dual engine stall. I snuffed both engines. I snuffed both engines. I had just cleaned up the airplane, so I'm clean. My gear and flaps are up, and I'm literally at about now 1,400 feet with no engines. Over the boat, I can't see anything. It's pitch black everywhere, and the first thing I did was grab my ejection handle. That was my first gut reaction. I'm like, oh crap, no, I got checklist. I got it. Okay, bold face. I'm going through them. I do this, and I'm cranking on the engine restart. Now we're already heading down. I immediately peg our best, glide speed, which is like 230 knots. I mean, you're a rock, right? So I'm heading down, and by about 1,000 feet, I get the engine starting to crank. Yeah, let's kind of jog left about 30 degrees. Yeah, just a little sightseeing out here. And it's starting to crank, and it takes a long time because we don't have the velocity to really help it out. So the air starts starting to happen, and we pass 800 feet, and it's not even halfway to the RPM where I can get the fuel going. I got the igniters going, right? It's a jet engine. And then all of a sudden, at 500 feet, my backseater is talking to the tower. They're yelling for us to eject. But I'm like, no, hold it. I'm almost there. And we hit 17% RPM, and I could put in the the fuel, and the thing lights. It starts to spin up. But now we're at 400 feet, we're at 300 feet, we're at 200 feet, and the guy in my back seat, he is like, he's watching it too. He's like, man, we got to eject. I'm like, hold it, I got it. And then all of a sudden, I almost felt like, it's almost like our rate of descent almost slowed down. There's no explanation on why it slowed down, because we weren't still at full thrust. All of a sudden, it hit 100% power. I hit full afterburner. We bottomed out just below 100 feet on one engine in full afterburner, climbed back up. I had to go out and accelerate to get the next engine going. And then I had now my heart rate's at about 190
yeah,
and my adrenaline's pumping, and I got to come back around and now try to land again. And I thought for sure I was going to have to, I was either going to smack into the water or have to eject in the ocean right in front of the boat, which is also kind of scary because you can't see it. That's one of the scariest things I had.
Golly. Now, I mean, geez, that's scary. Now, that's not the same mission where you guys were in radio silence and you had to navigate all the way back by like the stars and stuff like that? Some crazy.
Oh, that was totally different mission.
Okay, what was that? What was that about?
Oh, that was a bad night. We took off, and we were the only F14 in our flight that actually was able to launch because of maintenance issues. So we got attached to an F-18 flight, and we went in and we did a couple missions over Baghdad, actually North Baghdad, Basra, a couple different areas. And so we detached from the Hornet flight, and we're back over the Persian Gulf, and I'm finally like, oh my God, I mean, it was a pretty tense mission.
Were you getting shot at and stuff?
There was some opposition on the ground. We kept getting lit up by surface to ground radar. They never actually launched any missiles at us, but our radar warning receivers were constantly going off. Every time they go off, you gotta take the airplane and you flip it on its 90 degrees on the knife edge, and you're looking for anything, smoke, a light. Wow. I mean, it feels, and sometimes I think they would do it just to, here, why don't you cut about, come back west, turn to west. So I'm looking up at the stars, I'm relaxing, and we were doing something that night was called an MCON recovery, emissions control. There were some threats around the carrier, and we also practiced this, but we were told this evening was not an exercise. Everything's turned off. Radios are on, but navigation, radar, ILS, TACAN, VOR, everything's turned off. Lights. And basically they say, okay, that area, let's say where Centennial is, that's where we're going to be in that area when you come back. So we had this whole procedure to come in and find the boat. Well, I got on the intercom and I said, hey, Spike, what's the vector to Mother? Mother was what we called the ship. He goes, Rammer, our INS is inoperable. He used a different word, but it was not working. We didn't have GPS back then. This is 1990, 91, 92. They were just coming out. God. So we had no idea. And I'm like, oh crap. Well, we talked about it. If I got on the radio and we said, when we got a vector to Mother, which they would give us, that would have been what we considered a career limiting move.
Yeah, I bet.
Okay, because you're putting the battle group at risk. This is not just about, our crew. The other thing is the Persian Gulf is nasty. There's 57 varieties of sea snakes. You can see them swimming everywhere when the ship's going through. And dude, yeah, look it up. 57 varieties, and they're all crazy colors. And the flight surgeon comes in. He's like, "Okay, guys, here's the deal. They need like 3 different kind of antivenoms. They got neurotoxin, blood toxin, and this thing." And he's like, "Okay, if you get bit, if you eject, they're aggressive. So if you get bit, try to grab it and kill it, so we know what antivenom to give you."
Holy crap! Stuff it in your pocket.
I'm like, "Are you? Where's the crow? This guy?" We made fun of him for months, but. I'm sitting there with Spike, and I'm like, okay, we either make a radio call, but if we have a fuel ladder, we're very good with our fuel planning. We estimated we got about 15 minutes of fuel. We could make a guess, an educated guess, but in 15 minutes or less, we'd have to get on the radio and make a call, or we'd possibly have to be ejecting. God. So we looked up, we're like, okay.
Killed by sea snakes.
Get killed by sea snakes, right? So I look up, I'm like, okay, dude, there's the North Star.
Yeah, in northern.
Right. So we had to take celestial navigation as pilots. So we did that. Yeah, we want to stay in this box right here.
Yeah, and I'm going to stay clear of that rain that's moving this way.
Yep. And And we said, okay, there's that other constellation, so our guess is let's head this direction-ish, right? And so we head this direction, we're just flying. You see that traffic over there at like 2 o'clock way in the distance?
Okay, yeah.
That little teeny speck?
Yep.
All of a sudden, way in the distance, we saw a little light because at night we didn't have any of our strobes or beacons on. What we do have turned on, though, are these little strips, and they're kind of this fluorescent green for flying formation at night.
Okay.
And we could just barely see it. I'm like, I think. So we started
that was
heading toward it. So it was another airplane from the carrier.
Oh.
We thought. So we moved. We turned toward it. We get closer. We start to see some other ones, and we come in and we do the recovery the way that we're supposed to. We hadn't said a word to anybody, and we land, and we went to midnight rations, and we're sitting there eating pizza, looking at each other, and going, "Who knew that stupid course in college might have just saved our life?"
So how long were you in the Navy?
I was in for about 8 years.
8 years.
So I got in 88 and got out at the end of 95.
Okay, but you went in as a pilot, right?
Yep.
Going in on the pilot course.
Yep.
And just walk me through briefly what it is, and then it led all the way up to the Top Gun school.
Well, yeah, it was interesting. So, I mean, Top Gun came out in 1986, so I'm in college.
Oh, the movie, yeah.
The first movie, right?
Yeah.
I was about to be a junior in college, and I was just making our call.
Do a 180 here, clearing turn. Steep turn. Woo, at
So
500
yeah, so I was heading down to flight school. I actually got in. I got my orders. I'm heading down to flight school, and then our class officer said, "Hey, 1 out of every 10,000 people, because this movie has made it so popular, who applies in all the different programs are going to get to fly a fighter."
Oh, wow.
So I'm freaking out. Like, what did I do? This is stupid. I'm going to fail. I'm going to be embarrassed. And my dad pulled me aside and gave me some great advice I've actually used in business and for the rest of my life. He said, when you get down there, there's going to be a guy everybody calls the ace of the base, right? There's going to be a student everybody's talking about. But here's what I want you to do is he's figured something else out that nobody else is doing. Go find him and buy him a beer and ask him if he'll tell you what he's doing. Well, that guy was this guy named John Foster, and everybody was talking about him. Nobody had ever seen a student with grades like he had. He was like head and shoulders above everybody else. And he told me what he was doing. It wasn't intuitive. It's not something I would have thought of. And I started just doing what he was doing. And I ended up graduating my primary flight school class, #1, because of his mentorship.
Oh, wow.
And putting in the work. And then did the same thing in jets. And I was actually able to choose to fly the F14. But think about that. So here was the business takeaway. It doesn't matter what it is, right? Go find somebody that's done what you want to do. Ask them what they did to get the results. Ask yourself if you're willing to do what they did to get those results. And if your answer is yes, commit, tell somebody, and then don't be willing not to give up. Because there's always going to be adversities, right? Building businesses and everything. And so that, there's a lot of highs and lows. Went to my 8 years in, I went to 7 funerals. I mean, it was,
wow.
Right? That's pretty sobering when you realize what you're doing. So.
Separated parallel runways. Hazardous weather information Colorado is available on flight service. Local note on runway 28, happy lights are out of service.
Right there?
Yeah, that's nasty stuff.
X-ray.
Well, there's the airport, so we're heading straight home.
Yep, we'll have plenty of time. That's not moving super fast, but we're probably going to still be in the airplane when it starts raining.
Yeah, but so when I got down there, and there's just so much work. I mean, it was a really cool culture, though, right? The stakes were so high for all of us. Everyone had a dream, to fly jets and fly up aircraft carriers. And the slots were limited. Like, you had to have a certain, think of it like a GPA, right? Everything was graded
turn right
that you did. And then you had to be above a certain cutoff to even fly for jets. So we were all competing. And then let's say there was 1 or 2 jet slots for an entire, there was 6 training squadrons. So there might be 40, 50 guys graduate, let's say in a month. And there might literally be, sometimes there was only 1 or 2 jet slots, and everything else was helos, props, transport. But everybody shared what they were learning. It was like this amazing kind of place of co-opetition, so to speak.
Co-opetition, that's really good.
Right? It was just an incredible culture.
10-mile final.
Okay, get your 5-4 after left wing and a mile northbound parking.
Oh, 172, just, we had to make sure, just a little bit.
please, the sky.
We'll be there. Okay, so how did you get the north up?
That little button right there.
That doohickey.
Yeah.
Sky 2, Sierra Fox, cover that.
On my check ride, on my multi-engine check ride, I missed the 3 green down and locked, and we were on short final. And I had somebody holding short, and they said, 131 Delta Papa, your gear's not down. And I looked, I'm like, oh, we were single engine approach too. So I was like, ah! Just
Oh, because your single engine, the harm, the bell's probably going off, right?
Well, it's an old 1950 something Apache where there's no nannies on that thing. You flew it like a man. You crashed like a man. This is part of the flight where you're not supposed to ask questions and let the pilot actually land the airplane. So we'll just wait.
Okay.
Cause like, what's flap speed on this? Is that 110 knots? Is that what that is?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
110, then 85. So I could go 20 now. So imagine though, if we were coming in right now, and you're at 140 knots.
Yeah.
And if you don't put your tail hook right in where the white stripes are, you're going around. Just feels like a Sunday stroll right now, doesn't it?
I'm telling you, I was gonna get the paddle and start canoeing on this thing, man. Just,
5 Delta Sierra, was it?
we're almost there.
Yeah,
we're almost there.
I was carrying a little too much speed there.
That was your Navy carrier landing. Just plant it. Fight. Have you ever been in a real dogfight?
Not with an enemy aircraft.
Okay. All right. Have you ever been shot at, like missile, or have you ever had to do the evasive, like the flares or whatever?
One time.
Really?
Yep. We were coming in over a suspected SAM site, and we got all the missile launch indications. We couldn't see it, so we had to assume it was in the air. So we went through all the procedures. You know, we have a special maneuvers that you do, that you practice, you know, to defeat the kind of missile that it is. You know, kicking out chaff flares, and then we're looking. We never saw a missile in the air, but
75 Delta Sierra,
we're going around that way, and we'll come back in. This airplane?
Yeah, we're gonna. Well,
can you make that? I don't know how big this thing is.
I don't want to try. I'd rather go down this way and come back around.
Yeah.
Roger, waiting eye for release.
Usually you're landing 3.5 and 1.7, so you're coming down the other side. But we're just gonna go loop around. As long as there's nobody in this alley here. They shot down a couple of our airplanes. I think an F-16, a couple Hornets, one Tomcat, and other than that, that was it.
And then after that, or I guess during all that, that's pretty much owned the skies from there.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we used to do missions that we would design to fool them, to get them to come up, thinking like we only had one plane, that we were an easy target. We'd run in with our radars turned off. They were so afraid of the F-14 because of our Phoenix missile, they would just scatter. I mean, they would run away. So we would try to go in with our radars turned off and using the AWACS, the radar, you know, Air Force radar controller, to try to vector us toward a bogey, just so we could have something to do. And we got close once, and then he visually saw us. We got within about 8 miles of a bogey, and then I think as soon as he ID'd us, he literally did a 180 and afterburner and dove down into a surface-to-air missile ring. We could not follow him.
What type of aircraft were they flying?
That would have been I think it was a MiG-23.
Yeah.
Which is an old Soviet.
How did it come about, the Top Gun stuff, or being invited, or how does that work in real life?
Well, in real life, there's no Top Gun competition. There's no, like, you graduated 1, 2, 3. The pilots would kind of keep score amongst themselves, but what you're there is to create excellence in what you do, and then you have to go back to the squadron and take everything you learn. It's basically, think of it as train the trainer. You're going there to become an expert, and then you go back to the squadron, and then you become the pilot training officer. That is your job. You're going to Top Gun to get trained, and then you take all that knowledge and you give it back to everybody in your squadron. That's how it works. And I got orders, so I got called into my commanding officer stateroom and said, hey, Ramstead, you're the guy who's going. Man, I could not have been more thrilled. It was absolutely a dream come true. And then the next weekend, I was playing softball. The next weekend, and I hear, watch out! And I look, and poof, I got drilled in the eye with a softball, had a blowout fracture and nerve damage. And I had double vision, and I lost my medical. And this is 95. Clinton was drawing down the Navy, and because my medical was no longer valid after 6 months, I got processed out. Oh, it was brutal. Gosh.
All right, so after you got out processed out, you lost your medical. That was for the Navy. Were you able to, well, you still were able to fly civilian-wise though, right?
Well, no, I couldn't pass because of the double vision. I mean, I could have cheated the test, but I didn't want to, right? 6 months after I got out, I didn't notice the double vision. So I went and saw the ophthalmologist. He's like, yeah, it's gone. I'm like, oh, so I immediately applied to get back in the military. Like, I immediately, and my old commanding officer was now the commanding officer of all Naval Reserve Squadrons. And so I'm like, okay, he wrote me a letter of recommendation. Well, guess what? There was like 30 or 40 applications, and they had one spot for a reserve pilot. And this wasn't even flying fighters. This was flying DC-9s. And I didn't get it. I didn't get it.
Oh, man.
They gave it to a P3 pilot because it's multi-engine. So, so I applied. So I started. Man, that was hard. You know what? When your identity is, you know, who you are and what you do, and it's taken away. That was a really hard transition. I mean, I was in San Diego. I'd been stationed at Miramar. I went to the Strike Fighter Weapons School and instructed on the ground, hoping that it would come back. So I was part of the community, but I never got to fly there. And then I'm sitting there. I got a job selling cell phones. I'm knocking on doors, hoping somebody's home to sell them a cell phone, and jets are going over my head.
Oh, man.
It's a good thing I wasn't armed.
Yeah, golly.
But that was a whole journey. It was through that I, found a great church and really got some great things lined up in my life through that. But that was a hard transition. But in that, a buddy of mine was flying for Atlantic Coast Airlines, which was United Express. And once I got my medical back, he goes, "Hey, listen, they're hiring. So let me walk. Chief pilot's friend." So I got hired by Atlantic Coast. I was flying J-32s, Jetstream 32, twin turboprop, no autopilot, flying 5 to 7 legs a day, totally manual.
Gosh.
My stick and rudder skills, instrument flying skills, were never better.
I bet.
It was, you're flying 4, 5, 6 hours a day. I mean, there's no magic anything. Yeah. It was all steam gauges.
Yeah.
And the Garrett engines, these big, I mean, they are noisy as all get out. And
was it like cargo or something, or was it people?
No, it was passengers.
People.
19 people, no bathroom. People come back from like Vegas into Dulles, and I'm flying up to like Harrisburg. And they're like, "Where's the head?" I'm like, "We don't have one."
Oh my gosh!
People were, I got one story though. This is another time I was scared. I flew through a microburst.
Ooh.
We were coming into Dulles to land, and we hadn't even been warned of microbursts. And I'll never forget, I was sitting in the right seat, and it was a female captain, and she's flying the airplane, and we have different responsibilities, and all of a sudden, we hit severe turbulence. The airplane was shaking so hard, I literally couldn't even read the instrument panel. So I told her, I'm going to just watch altitude, VSI, and, she had her hand on the throttle, right? Because that's how you land. I'm like, I had her just put 2 hands on the yoke, because it was the only way to even try to control the airplane. And I'm working the throttle and watching the airspeed and the VSI. She's just looking out. That's all we could do. Yeah. And I've never been shaken so hard in my life. I mean, literally shaking so hard. I thought instruments were going to fall out of the panel. And we're getting pushed down, and she's pulling up, and I'm gunning the power. And it was just... And how we landed safely. She put it on the deck safely, and I'm thinking, okay, we're gonna land and roll out, and people are gonna be like, "Yeah, you saved our life." Not a word. Not a word. And I'm like, okay, I don't even want to turn around. So we get into the gate and we shut off, and I'm like, still not a word. And I turn around and I look at all the people back here, and they're white as a sheet. I'll guarantee you there's people from that flight that still talk about it, and it's the reason they don't fly to this day.
Yep. Some of them met Jesus. Some of them were getting ready to.
Oh.
So it was like, whoa!
I think if I didn't have so much to do in that moment, that's exactly what I would have been thinking.
You're like, we're all gonna. This is how it ends.
This is how it ends. I don't know how an airplane flies through that. I've never experienced anything like that.
And since, never again.
Never since. No, that is scary stuff. A microburst like that.
Man.
Yeah.
Wowzers. Well, we have lots more story to tell, and we haven't even gotten to the crazy, Superman horse, kind of sort of paralyzed, like not paralyzed, but like knocking on death's door for quite a while, part of the journey. And now, how long has it been?
We'll have to go flying again.
I think we'll have to go flying again, yeah.
The accident that I had that put me in the hospital for 2 years was September of 2011. So we're coming up on my 12th year anniversary.
Yeah.
And I probably got back to full-time work just in the last year and a half.
Yeah.
And now it was that long of recovery.
It was your second solo since getting your medical back, because it took years and years to recover enough to be able to fly again.
Oh yeah, until I felt, I think, comfortable in an airplane. My left eye is blind from the accident, had 25 surgeries. And so, yeah, this is exciting. So Jimmy here wanted to make sure he was my first solo, but I just got,
He's like, oh, I couldn't wait. I couldn't have patience. And I'm like, okay, we can't film your first solo back, so I guess we'll go out in thunderstorms or something. In this shaggin' wagon of a...
This is a little shaggin' wagon. It flies though. So literally, I finally got my medical back. It was about 10 years working with the FNA, back and forth. Finally got my medical, and then literally about a month ago, I started flying. So I think I've flown about 8 hours with an instructor.
Yeah.
So I did instrument currency, did mountain currency. We went out because I was mountain before, which is, if you ever get a chance to just do that, mountain flying is really interesting. There's a lot to learn about.
A lot of the weather.
About the weather, the winds, the ridge crossings. Like, how do you start thinking about airplanes?
24,000 feet. That's how you do it.
Well, then it's different. Yes. But when you're flying through passes, it's really beautiful flying. You're literally 1 to 3,000 AGL flying through the mountains and the passes. It depends on the weather. You got to make sure you have, and the winds have to be right. But anyway, but I finally got current, and then I did about a week ago. I was good to go. So I said, I'm going flying alone for the first time, and a friend of mine went with me. You might even...
Wait, a friend of yours went with you on your solo, so it wasn't a solo flight.
Yeah, I haven't... Have I flown alone? No, I haven't. So I actually haven't been just me alone in the airplane.
That would be interesting.
I've always been.
And you flew.
And you're a pilot, right? I mean, you could be like, okay, Ramstead, I know you flew a lot, but I'm taking over. We could have gone there.
Freaking guy's blind in one eye, he's half crazy, brain dead. No. Wait, so part of that story is you flew to an event.
I did,
a retreat type of thing. So
I had a Cirrus, an SR-22, a G3.
Yeah. So
but I flew from Denver to Great Falls, Montana. It's about a 3.5 hour flight, up at 25,000 feet. Beautiful flight. I loved it. And then it was the next day, I got on a horse, and then it was this retreat for a nonprofit. And it was supposed to be lunch at the back of this beautiful ranch up outside of Great Falls. And my horse just bolts and takes off. And at a full gallop, like we had like 80 yards to head, he just kept going faster and faster. I couldn't get him to turn or stop. And I just remember right in front of the fence thinking, this is not going to end well. And that's the last thing I remember. He came to the fence and he bucked so hard he flipped over, slammed into the fence. When he did that, he launched me Superman into a 3-inch steel beam that went across here. So I caved in this whole part of my skull. I broke all the bones in my skull except my jaw and my cheekbone. That's why my eye's blind. All this was shattered. Broke my neck at C2, lost 8 teeth, shattered my shoulder, and then the next part down completely crushed my rib cage, and I had broken ribs, punctured my lung. And I ended up I was in the hospital the next almost 2 years, 25 surgeries. We found out what happened to me is not medically survivable. So I can share the details if you want, but on the ground in Great Falls, I was in God's presence, and I was told that I was going to be healed and given a second chance. And it was game-changing.
And this is it.
This is it. And you know what? It was, we talked to multiple doctors that said just even the head trauma, where the neck fracture was, I had no spinal cord damage, just even the trauma to my chest, any one of those should be life-ending. I even had a guy came back, he'd been a doctor in Iraq, and he said, listen, he reached out to me just a couple of years ago and said, man, I got to tell you, I totally walked away from my faith from what I saw in Iraq. I couldn't reconcile things, but I was also watching you recover, and I also knew your case. I was a consulting doc, and I know it's not possible. I just want to thank you because I've come back to my faith just watching what God did in your life. So it's been an amazing journey. It was a long journey with a brain injury, right? I only, after 2 years in the hospital, I only could work a couple hours a week. That's kind of when we really started hanging out, and you were building the roofing company, right? Just starting to get into flying.
No, I had nothing to do with flying.
Nothing to do with flying yet.
No.
That's right.
That wasn't until I joined the military.
That's right. You joined. I'm like, you're gonna what? You're like, yeah, I'm joining.
40. At 40.
I'm like, I got like a month before the deadline. I'm like, well, you go, boy.
Boy, that turned out well.
How was that?
No, it was a terrible idea, actually. it was absolutely a terrible idea.
You know, it's funny. I was thinking to myself, that's a terrible idea, but there is no stopping you. There is no. You guys know this, right? Hey, maybe I'll buy Elvis's jet. There's no stopping you.
No, that's a financially astute decision.
I'm not saying I'm just saying when you get an idea, there is no stopping.
Yeah.
I wonder if that thing will fly.
With enough money, yes.
Anything will. Anything will work. Right. Look at this airplane. There's proof.
Yeah, it's still. I'm guessing 20,000 hours is on this sucker right here.
Oh, you imagine?
No, I don't want to know, honestly.
So.
But man, that
was a long journey back, and then. You know, out of that, I just basically had to rebuild, and I've built a leadership and coaching and training company, and brings me now all over the world. I get to speak. We got a huge team. We're doing some really cool things, and just starting to get back into flying. So I'd love to get a Scariest again. I love having something that, you know, gets me places.
There you go.
But I'd love to get it. My wife would like me to have a twin.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That would. Even with the parachute on the Scariest, she's like, I'd still rather have a second engine. So one of these days, I got to keep watching your videos on which are the best twins to buy.
Yeah, I mean, that's easy. It's the Aerostar.
You think so?
Oh, gosh. That is just sex with wings. That is just... Okay.
That's when you fly solo.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So,
honey, I'm going flying.
Yeah. You just fly because you can't. It's all push rod controls. It feels, it's just so...
What's it cost?
Well, to buy or to operate?
To buy.
I mean, to buy, you 150 to 250 grand for nice ones.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they're like homing 540s. You can get them turbo, non-turbo, pressurized, non-pressurized. Now, some of them, it's the world's fastest piston twin.
I would get non-pressurized.
Yeah, the
what
600.
I mean, just the extra maintenance for a pressurization system.
Well, see, that's where you get it, right? So the Aerostar.
I don't mind having a cannula. That's what I used to make.
It was built to be a jet originally. Ted Smith, the commander.
That's right.
Yeah, he built it specifically to be a jet. But in order to get the FAA approval and certification, he had to put prop engines on it, and he started with those 540 Lycomings. And then that became the Aerostar, and then funding and world changed and other things happened. But it's the world's fastest piston twin airplane. It cruised. Now there's one they made that was a 700 and counter-rotating crazy stuff. It cruised at 272 knots.
No kidding.
A prop, like a piston. That's nuts.
And what's its altitude?
I mean, it's limited, I think.
Mid-20s?
Yeah, it's limited to like 24, 26 or something like that.
Turbocharged?
Of course,
probably,
yeah.
You know what, though? In the Scariest, the 25,000, except for some rare exceptions, like with big towering cumulus, I could go anywhere I wanted.
Oh, yeah.
Flight into known icing, that thing.
It had Fiki? It was a Fiki plane?
The Scariest would, yeah.
Wow.
Oh, it was... I can tell you, once I got stuck, you know, between two fronts, and they kind of converged. I'm like, okay, there's no lightning, you know, moderate turbulence. I'm going to push through it, and it was moderate rime. I mean, it would have been uncomfortable in any other airplane, but I had Fiki going, went
Did it
through
have
it.
Boots on it, or
nope, just all wet wing, wet tail. It was spinning off the prop, so it's also throwing it on the windshield. Jeez. So in that
like
situation,
windshield alcohol or what?
Well, no, it's throwing the glycol on the prop to keep the prop from de-icing, but that throws it, so it kind of coats the windshield.
Interesting.
So I had a little bit of ice like in the corners, nothing, no buildup on the wings, no buildup on the tail, because we were looking at the tail, and it was about 10 minutes of being in this, and we pushed through it because we're heading from here up to Jackson, Wyoming. And when we landed, you could hardly even tell that we'd been in icing.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, the Fiki in that Scariest is the real deal. I wouldn't knowingly fly into icing, but you can.
Well, yeah.
But it's nice to have in case you get in that situation.
Yeah, because I always kind of view Scariest pilots as pinky up pilots, if you know what I'm saying. like
Little
pinky
bougie?
up. Yeah,
Little bougie?
little pinky. And yeah, I mean, parachutes are for quitters, if I'm honest, right? Come on, see you, Captain. Freaking hold on, we're at 200 feet and we're trying to light it. We're still good. We can ride this thing out.
We're riding in.
Yeah, we're not gonna eject.
Stall it right above the trees.
Yeah, see, you're like, parachutes are for quitters. You're riding it all the way.
Well, here's the one reason I had the Cirrus, because I could true out at 215.
See, that's what I'm saying.
There was nothing else I had access to without buying something.
Yep.
Because I bought into it with it while I was flying it. There was a club here that had 2 for rent, that an SR20 and a 22, and wasn't turbocharged. And there's a guy I met there who had his airplane hangar there that owned it with a couple other guys. So I bought into like a fraction of it.
Right.
And it was the twin turbo. The thing would climb at 1,000 feet per minute all the way up.
Jeez.
I mean, the thing was just, it was a hot rod.
I know.
fun.
I hate to admit how nice they are. I hate to.
One thing I don't like though, the side stick has a detent right at neutral, and you're sitting there trying to flare, and you keep catching the detent. And I never felt like I could really be smooth in the flare as you're kind of coming in. That's the one little nitnoid thing that I had.
That's kind of getting a little nitpicky.
That's probably,
That's pinky up.
That's
That's a little pinky
Fair.
up. Yeah. They're Porsche people.
you know what pinky up pilots are in the Navy? All the F-18 guys.
Oh, is that okay?
And the thing just flies itself.
All right. So there's the comments.
There you go.
Okay. Holy crap. John,
That was fun, man.
I really appreciate it. And it's been too long.
It has been.
It's been too long.
Well, you were one. You know what? When I got this back, you were one of the first guys I reached out to. Well, as soon as I got it, a month and a half ago.
Yeah, it wasn't long.
Because I knew you would appreciate what it meant to me.
Well,
So,
yeah, because I've known you since you were.
You met right at as soon as I was
you
kind
were
of.
starting to kind of sort of do stuff, but yeah, you weren't able to work more than just a couple hours a day.
We met 9 or 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
You were still part of. We met through EO.
I want to say it was 2009 or 10.
No. The accident was at 11, so I think we met.
Oh yeah, then yeah.
I think we probably met 2013. So
Yeah.
10 years ago.
That was Tim Brown whenever he started doing his speaking tour stuff.
Yep, and I just started my podcast.
Yeah.
Jump in the Parade.
Yep, that was his book that he was doing.
Yep. Yeah.
There you go. Well, and are you still doing the podcast?
Yeah, Eternal Leadership.
Okay, here. That was not a good. It's apparently not a good friend. And here's the plug. Go check out Eternal Leadership podcast. One of the best business podcasts there is. And whatever else, just Google John Ramstead and you'll probably see all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yes, you'll see. And I'd love to have you join the podcast. It's all about how to bring your faith into your work, but it got written up in both Inc. and Entrepreneur Magazine.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. It's one of the top podcast leaders need to be listening to.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
On that note,
that was pretty cool.
I mean, it's kind of opposite, really, of Jimmy's world. You know how we go about stuff. Because here you have on this side, you have the what could possibly go wrong, full send. We'll kind of build the airplane on the way down, and then you have on this side like planned leadership, professionalism, that kind of thing.
With a good hint of entrepreneurism.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, that's true. You have the cowboy in there a little bit.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Cowboy with a parachute.
Yeah. How do you get out of this airplane?